Hello and welcome back to the It's Just Coffee podcast. My name is Kirk Pearson. I'm joined by my co-host,
Rohan Cook. Hi.
And together we are the podcast that is It's Just Coffee. Today we've got a bit of a rockstar shift going on, including Rockstar Ross, which is Ross Quail over here. So everyone welcome Ross, please.
Ross.
Thanks, everybody.
Now,
great to be here.
Barista, roaster, green buyer, one of the biggest cafes in Melbourne, and roasters, St. Ali, and now Hemro Group. What haven't you done in coffee, mate?
I'm not sure, but if it's there, I'll still have a crack at it.
Yeah, great. My first question I want to start off with, Ross, are you the Ross from the Ross droplet technique?
Probably not.
Yeah, okay, so not from that. For those at home that don't know, Ross droplet technique is when you spray your beans before grinding them. And I would have to say that you actually would probably hate this as someone who sells grinders.
Oh, no, I mean, look, I think it's always within reason. I mean, if you're going to use the things that are complementary to the technology, then it's going to be all right. Okay, we used to say, don't put your beans in the freezer. I mean, how many people's parents didn't tell them that? And then my old man looks at me now and goes, I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's maybe Mechanic will come up with the grinder next to that, just like sprays every dose of coffee with just like a little bit of water pre-grinding.
Yeah, there you go. It's going to distribute. It'll have
the humidifier section, the E80 humidifier. But hey, we got a really great podcast. Ross is very knowledgeable on the industry, all things grinder. We'll get to that in a minute. We're going to go through some coffee news. We'll ask Ross all about what he likes about coffee, and we'll also get to everyone's favourite segment, the extra hot take with two sugars. Yeah, that's Rowan's go-to. And yeah, so I mean, shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's just dive straight into some coffee news.
No. We get Ross's coffee order first.
Oh yeah, so, great way to start the show.
So your coffee order every day. How are you taking it these days?
Well, I probably still do what I always did at Ali. I would sit down and have a cappuccino first, and I'm going to order a long black at the same time. So I get my long black with the cappuccino, and then I'll drink them in that order.
You're not working at a coffee roastery anymore. So have you got a local that you go to, or do you do it at home, or you got...
Look, honestly, I'm out of the country. I was probably out of the country 18 times last year, so it's wherever I am. And so realistically, I'll probably check Insta, or I'll check my friends that are in the region and say what is good, what's around me. So at the moment, that takes me everywhere. I mean, one of my kids works in Hampton, one works in Sandringham. So if they're down there, I'll go to their cafes. But I wouldn't say that I've got a dedicated one and only. Okay, well, you're Mr. Worldwide, the new people. You're going to be in South Korea tomorrow afternoon. If you're in Seoul, I don't know, Senna Coffee. Yeah, well, obviously Senna's good. Fantastic. I mean, there's the other end of the spectrum. Certainly, you got Fritz and BK's an old time friend, and I love going there. But you got new places like Flash Coffee that are turning up that are doing really sort of different, innovative, and they've got a huge store down in Gangnam. But there's also, I think there's an ABC roastery there as well. So I mean, look, Korea is the land of fit outs for cafes that just are, out of control. So for me, wherever I can, but I'm usually somewhere around Gangnam.
Yeah, nice.
And talking about international coffee there, one of the questions that we like to ask when we have people on is, we're obviously from Melbourne here, and a lot of people, especially Melburnians, would claim that Melbourne does maybe the best coffee in the world. We kind of like the idea of challenging that, of looking outside of that. Is there somewhere else in the world that you think is doing coffee better?
Well, look, I'm going to give you a bit of a diplomatic answer in the sense that coffee that's better has to be the coffee that reflects the people that drink it, right? So when you go to Korea, their market's probably 50% black coffee. So it's pretty different to what we do. On an experiential level, I'd probably say cafes like, if we're talking Korea, Grey Gristmill do a fantastic experience. The baristas are dressed, suited up, ties, everything is like a fishbowl view. They've got all types of, coffee and preparation methods, and it's super squeaky clean. And I've got a bit of an affinity for clean within a roastery or in a cafe. So I think in context, Australians do the intention of milk-based coffee in cafes with food better than anybody, all right? I'm happy for that to always be the case. In fact, let's just get it out of the way now. Melbourne is still better than Sydney, even though Sydney still does some pretty amazing stuff, all right? But
hot take.
my point of view is if I'm going to Korea, it's what I'm drinking that is the best for what the locals do. And I think places like Grey Gristmill do a version of Korean coffee that I think is outstanding. Do I love the taste and the flavour? Well, sometimes, I'll go to a different coffee for that reason. But I guess what I want to see when I travel is I want to see the best expression of what that culture has to offer. And that may be different to what I want, but that's actually what I need.
And now I'm super interested in you saying that, you think Melbourne's doing that better than Sydney. Please elaborate on that. Hit us with some points.
You're really digging the heel in on Sydney this afternoon, but I dig it. Let's go.
Look, I'm going to say Melbourne's easier to traverse. And so if you're going to have a cafe experience, Melbourne you can get around and you can do 6 to 10 baller cafes in a day. Now, if that's what you want to do, I feel like Melbourne's got that in the sense that we have this accessibility to cafes. Then if you look at, I guess, the relentless competitiveness, but there's a good nature to it in Melbourne. Sometimes that can be a bit standoffish, but I think the competitive nature of the Melbourne Baristas is what's really driven the scene the whole time. People are, I guess, maybe in a positive way, trying to outdo each other. And I love that about Melbourne. Whereas I think Sydney is a different vibe. I think they've got often a backdrop that beats out Melbourne. They've got beaches or they've got views or whatever else that's amazing. And so, but in context for what I want and what I like is I want people that are really trying to push the boundaries where I can see a whole bunch of them. And I've always found that Sydney has great cafes. Don't get me wrong. It's a close second, right? But the thing is, I feel as though when I'm traveling through Sydney, it's just harder to get to everywhere. And maybe that's just my experience of Sydney.
Absolutely is.
Yeah, well, mic's on. Yep. Well, let's get into some coffee news, hey?
There's some coffee news.
First up, the cost of a tin of instant coffee has almost doubled in the past year. That is according to a report by Michael West Media, independent reporter, who is saying that a tin of Nescafe was $14 a year ago and is now $26 a pop.
I'm going to go broke. That's all I drink.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a bit how you're going.
What are we doing? Maybe I need to get Golden Brown into making some instant coffee there.
Ross, what's your take on this?
Well, if you weren't aware, Australians have the largest per capita consumption of instant coffee of any country in the world, so far as I know. So they're onto something. And look, within that market, within the supermarket aisles, people are looking to make money. So
has the cost of coffee doubled in the last year?
I'd say it's certainly gone up. Is the cost of their coffee doubled in the last year? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe the processes, maybe the rest of it, or maybe people are just not willing to give up their instant.
Yeah, I've had a gutful. Anyway, according to Al Jazeera, Robusta could be featured on specialty coffee menus more in the future as climate change could affect future harvests of Arabica. So Vietnamese coffee growers are growing and processing Robusta in ways that is increasing the quality scores to a level not really seen before for Arabica. So it's more appealing to specialty coffee drinkers, particularly in Vietnam. As we all know, Arabica requires a lot more care when you're growing it, so it's a bit harder. Robusta, as its namesake would suggest, a bit more robust, can survive in more adverse conditions. What do you reckon? A bit more Robusta on the menu?
Well, I'll be honest, I've never liked Robusta. I'm happy to say it. I know that's got a place. But last year I was in Surat, the home of Mahatma Gandhi, right? And I was visiting cafes in the middle of India. And I went to a place called Cafe de Meat. And I had a blend from the Indian Barista champion who won this year. His name eludes me right now. But it was 50% Robusta and I had no idea.
And,
wow.
And
so
you gave some of that to me. That was quite good.
That was exceptionally good, and there's a hyper localism I think in India that's keeping all the best coffee in India, and we're not getting it. And what we are getting is the traditional stuff that maybe we don't like. But I'd say, prior to that visit, I would have walked further down the street to avoid a Robusta. But times are changing.
I also go to say that Robusta compared to Arabica stereotypically has double the amount of caffeine in what you're doing. I call it when I have it the dirty high, because like when you have an espresso, you like get that buzz, you can feel it coming through you. When I have Robusta, it's like the jitters, it's like the shake. It gets me feeling real wide.
Yeah, 100%. I have the same reaction to it, but and then the flavour really doesn't do it any justice. But
Well, I want to highlight what Ross said about keeping the coffee, what he said about keeping the coffee produced in India. It's the exact opposite in Kenya, where 98.4% of the coffee is now being exported, which means 1.6 is consumed by the country, which I think is a bit of a shame. Kenyan coffee is some of the best and most distinct in the world. What's your take on that, guys?
Well, I feel bad because I just put a Kenyan single origin on the menu, so now I feel like I'm taking it away.
I mean, we don't need to shame Kenyans. I feel like this is
an amazing coffee.
This has been a great year for Kenya and Ethiopia, quality-wise. But I went to Bolivia a few years ago, and they actually, what I find quite fascinating was they were serving coffee from Takesi, which is one of the best farms there, and I think Takesi have a bit of a role in that as well. But it's kind of like us. We export all of our liquid natural gas and then it's sold back to us far more expensive. So, I mean, I think it's a bit of a shame, but...
Well, it just depends, I guess, culturally, maybe how much do they drink? Do they drink a lot? Is that 1% enough to get everybody a cup of coffee that they want, relative to the total production and population? I don't know the answer to that. But, I mean, if people want a coffee and they can't get it, that's a crime.
Well, I tell you what, we didn't do enough research to find out, but we're happy to talk about it in the news.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of news, you got some from Perth.
Oh, yeah. So WA is going to ban single-use cups, not biodegradable, but single-use cups in general. It's just a shame that they can't ban the long Mac topped up.
You can always tell when the West Coast Eagles are in town or Fremantle Dockers, because there's a lot of tourists coming in asking for the long Mac topped up.
And for people who are wondering, so I don't even completely know. A long Mac topped up is basically just a strong latte, right? It's like a double shot just topped up with milk. Is that right?
Pretty much.
I think it's a Magic, strong flat white, one of them.
Well, they need to get rid of that. But WA, good on you for getting rid of single-use cups. But I do have to ask the question. I look at it and I go, that is a great thing. Great, remove waste. I'm all for it. But as people that have worked in cafes and done that, does that have any effects to you guys that I'm maybe not thinking about?
Oh, no, I think people have got to make laws like that to encourage the innovation to happen around coffee. I think that's got to happen. And we'll come up with a product or come up with something that really meets that. And again, going back to India, they don't have, in Surat, they have a real rubbish problem over there. In India, the owner of that place thought it was cheaper and figured it out. It was cheaper to just buy cups made locally out of glass and then that people could then throw those in the bin, right, in their recycling, than to actually buy takeaway cups.
Wow.
So over there, that was their solution to it. And so no one walks out the door with a paper cup. Everyone walks out the door with it. And, last year when I was in China for HotelX, I went to a great barista champion, Jeremy Jang. His stand, you got to buy a ceramic cup. And that's the cup you get, and they wash it, give it back to you, and you can try more coffees. So,
I like that.
Look, if it makes us do something different, and it's a little bit of a pain, you know what? Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's get in. Let's get out of the news now and into some Ross. So, Ross, thank you for joining us. You've got a flight early tomorrow morning, so very, very appreciative that you're here. We actually met working together at a coffee roaster here in Melbourne, St. Ali. So, right. What were you doing there? And there's a lot of talent coming out of there now. A lot of people have gone on to do great things.
And is it true that you didn't even know Kirk's name for the first year that he was working there?
Quite possibly.
Yeah, it is. It is. It 100% is.
Do you know, was there any names that were thrown around that were not Kirk that you can remember off the top of your head?
He went, I remember once he was like, old mate made me a good coffee. And I was like, whew.
Hey, that's good though. You got at least he made me a good coffee.
Well,
you
Ross is an extremely harsh judge.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say harsh, truthful. Maybe.
Honest. We were talking about St. Ali and we were just looking at the amazing talent that's coming out of there. Kirk, for one. What an amazing guy doing all that. But you've also got Andy from Andy Cooks. You've got Dobbers, some great chefs coming out. And they're all shooting to stardom in their own different ways. What do you think it is about St. Ali that's really pushing out that kind of caliber of chef and barista?
Well, look, it's probably a multitude of different things. You had a time when St. Ali was really taking off and a peripheral industry like the fine dining and the restaurant industry was in a little bit of a decline in the sense that the nighttime venues were starting to sort of go off the boil. So there were a lot of chefs around that were looking to get out of where they were and into a daytime job. So you'll find, whether it's the Andy Gale, let's not forget one of the OGs, Ben Cooper, right? Ben Cooper was St. Ali in the beginning and really put that on the map. And, obviously he's doing some pretty amazing things now. But a lot of those chefs came from other areas of hospitality, but then came to work in cafes because of the lifestyle that it represented. So you look at it from that angle. When you look at my time involved with St. Ali, I mean, I really tried to surround myself with people that were great at what they did. So they were people like, Matt Perger, Emily Oak, Ben Morrow, Shinsaku Fukuyama, who was there, the Latte Art Samurai, to Kirk's, and then all these other people then started to be attracted by others, Jamie Thompson, Leon Holdsworth. This culture of trying to get people together and be really competitive, like I touched on earlier before. People were quietly competitive in what they were doing. We were trying to make better coffee. We were trying to win barista competitions, but we're also trying to make coffee that surprised each other that it was better than the last one we made. So my role, Kirk said sometimes maybe the truth pill was a bit hard, but occasionally if people wanted to know if the coffee was better or not, I would tell them, because I genuinely wanted us to be the best. And only the truth's really going to put that forward. You got to put it in a constructive way. But I think I wouldn't put it down to myself. I think Sal had a big impact on that. And then also St. Ali became a bit of a mecca for people to come and do their stage, so to speak, to get their skills on bar for whoever was on bar at that time, and really build their resume and build their quiver of skills.
And that's something it's a really interesting point that you bring up, because I feel like a lot of or specialty coffee culture in Melbourne is almost an exportable commodity. We have a lot of people that come and get their training here and then go back home and open cafes overseas.
That is 100% the case. Like the first time I did a proper coffee tour in Shanghai, I was downtown. I'd walked out of my hotel, around the corner. I could smell coffee roasting. So I walked to where it was. It was a little cafe that was just starting out called Seesaw. They've got about, I think probably more than, they've got quite a lot of shops now. I couldn't put the number on it, but it's a large amount. I walk in the door, and then I walk in and I got a Sensory Lab employee, Jeffrey, who'd worked for me, 2 years prior. And Ross, how you going? And there's a lot of people in China. Okay, I'll state the obvious, right? But if I can walk around the corner and then you have that, and then it's out there. I mean, the same thing with Indonesia. 60,000 Indonesians were coming to Victoria every year back then. So that exportable quality of whether it be the hospitality, whatever it is, and cafe industry is definitely seeds in the wind.
And please tell me that when you walked into this cafe, you came in, got the coffee, and just instantly rated it right then and there. It's like, could be better. Could be better.
You've lost your touch, mate. But I want to know what sort of got you into coffee? Because you've been around the traps for a long time. What made you, and you're a very passionate person, so I imagine whatever you chose to do in life, you would have had an absolute red hot go at. What made you choose coffee?
Well, there's a couple of things when you think about it, with the things that push you in the area. One was I went to the Army. I got a scholarship to the Defence Force Academy when I finised school. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I'll aim high. And that experience was uncomfortable. I was okay at it, but I just came to the realization that I definitely know, right, that this is not for me. This is not what I want to do. And so I came back out. I'd always worked in, whether it be a corner, like I grew up in Anglesea. So I worked in like a milk bar that also did some veggies and the rest of it. So I'd always been around people in businesses, talking to people, doing things like that. So that's what I fell back into. And my mum said to me, do things that you love doing. So I went back into things that I love doing, which was with people. And so the hospitality area was just where it came to pass. And in the early days, I was at reception centres and things like that. I was I was an MC for people when they didn't have anyone to speak at their wedding. So I'd get to know people in about 10 minutes and then speak at somebody's wedding or their anniversary, where everybody was just, pretty stone cold and didn't have anything to say. So that was you were like a warm-up guy for real. And then that led me into coffee. I came to Melbourne. I went back to George's. I don't know if you remember George's back in the day in Melbourne, but that was like
in Camberwell.
Yeah, that's where I started out as well.
And I loved George's in the sense that it had this old world charm, and I'd go there when I was a kid with my mum when I came to Melbourne. So I went up to George's, and I hadn't really had an espresso coffee ever. Anglesea wasn't really big for the whole cafe scene. And I went across the road and went to Quist's. And if you know Jimmy Baruda, he's had the same hairstyle and had the same vest since then, and he's still got it now. But I had a coffee there and I was like, what is this? This is great. And then I started getting into, obviously went to uni, drank more coffee and the rest of it, and going, I really like this, but it wasn't really vibe in terms of a career. But I was searching for something to do in hospitality, and then, without getting too deep in the weeds, I had some experiences that led me to a job in coffee, then another job in coffee, and I really, it wasn't making a living; it was getting by for a really long time. In the 90s, making coffee, it was not a career. But I loved doing it. I loved that when I made a coffee, people really liked it. That made me feel good about it. You get that oxytocin moment where you're in a cafe, you're talking to somebody and they drink that coffee and they stop and they go, oh my God, that's good. That's just what I needed. And I've never got sick of that feeling. So I think that's probably what got me into it, and that's what's kept me in it.
It's interesting. It feels like a lot of this is coming back, and I think I have a similar thing of just like the people that drive you. And I think that so much of serving the coffee is that experience that you have, whether it's like making their day, giving them something new, having that convo, whatever it is. It's that kind of people that all rounds it out.
But you spent, so obviously you've gone through, you've done all these things in your coffee career, led to what your role is now, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I want to ask, one thing that people might not realize about you is that you've judged the World Barista Championship I don't know how many times, and you've been a head judge there. And
sounds like you're a good judge. Sounds like you do that a bit.
Judge.
It's like the agony and the ecstasy barista comps. And I did that. I think I did the Australians for a little over 15 years and all comps in Australia. And then I did quite a number of different comps at the world level for about a decade or so. And that was fantastic. I mean, that was the only school that I could go to early on. And that put me amongst the people that were as passionate as me around coffee. But you would save every dollar that you had to pay for a flight to go over there, take your annual leave, and your boss is looking at you going, "You're nuts. Why are you spending all your money on that?" But it was the only place where I could find my people back then, because there weren't that many people taking seriously. So I love the WBC and World Coffee events for what they gave me. They gave me a start in life. It's probably, I've moved to a different stage in my life now, but look, it connected me with people that I consider lifelong friends. And so again, it comes back to people.
Yeah. And I hope from this moment after the podcast that we're lifelong friends as well.
Mate, I'm calling you.
Please. We'll exchange numbers after this. We'll be chatting every day.
Every couple of months I get a quailing on the phone. It's great. It's great. Ross is on his drive back from a deal and he thinks of me and it's good. But while we're on the subject, what's like the best espresso and best milk that you've had? I think I know your answer for espresso. Can I guess it, or do you want to?
Oh, you can have a guess. Yeah, I think you'll be pretty close.
Berg Woo, 2016?
100%.
Okay. Yeah. The infamous raining sixes.
Yeah, it was. He had one before he even got to the SIG drink set. That's how many points he got. But the score sheets back then were accuracy to taste descriptors. You got a multiplier as well as the multiplier that went on the tactile scores. And everything that he said was exactly what the coffee was. And as I walked around the room as head judge then, I just looked at everybody's score sheets looking over the shoulders just to make sure where everybody's at, what are their comments as they fill out things. And everyone was aligned. I looked at my sheet and my sheet was the same. And I had goosebumps that weren't going away. I was like, wow, that coffee was the best coffee that I'd had to date. And what took it over the top, a little bit of backstory for you, I'd had that coffee, right, before the comp. Right? So
what was the coffee?
So it was Finca Deborah.
Jamison Savage, right? And we tried that because at the time we had a brilliant guy working with us at St. Helene Sensory Lab called Eddie Pan. He was the Thailand barista champion. And Lucy Ward, who is a gun and still at St. Ali and another industry legend, a great person in green coffee, she put that coffee on the table. And the first thing I said when I tasted that coffee is that is a coffee that will win a barista competition. It is everything that you want that speaks to you as to what it tastes like. A lot of times you can be a bit confused. You love a coffee, but you can't put your finger on it. There's this esoteric quality. Whereas this thing was just like, it was jasmine flowers and mandarin juice. That's what it was. And when Burke said that, it was like that. His roasting version was a little bit different and probably better than even what we did in the sample roast. We couldn't use it because another roaster in Australia had it at the time and then sort of embargoed it. So it just disappeared and I'd had it on a couple of times. That was that. And then it turned up at the competitions and it was even better than I remembered. Yeah, right. And just quickly for milk, was there a particular milk coffee that stood out to you and not nothing?
Oh, no, there's some really good ones. I think Colin Harmon did some really great coffees in the day. I mean, he did I had some coffees. I think he did in Austria. He did a Margahipe, I think, and he was using an Anfim grinder back then. And I was like, this is great, you know. But I think milk coffees, to me, they're, as I would say to people in barista comps, it's the first signature drink. You know, so it constantly changes. I couldn't tell you my favorite sig drink, but milk is such a transient thing. Like, I love milk a lot. And so for me, if the milk's not the same, the drink's not the same. So there's a little bit of extra elements in a milk base.
Well, let's get on to what you're doing now, which is you're the sales director for Asia for Hemro. Is that correct? Did I get that title correctly?
Yeah, for Asia Pacific. Yep.
And so Hemro's would you say conglomerate grinder company now? So you've got a few different brands.
Well, it's family owned, right? So still owned privately. And the Hemro is an umbrella company for the 4 brands that they own. So it is Malkönig, which is 100 years this year.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. Apparently well, I don't know. I can't answer. You got me stumped for the first time. You've got Ditting, originally a Swiss brand, but now made in Germany. And you've got Anfim, another brand it's getting up there in years, and we have a Hey Cafe. And basically, Hemro is a end-to-end and probably the largest end-to-end manufacturer of grinding solutions in the world. There's an industrial portfolio, a home portfolio, and a component grinder portfolio, which is a bit of an unknown aspect of the business. But essentially, I'd say I think probably the top 10 super automatic machines would either use Hemro burrs or Hemro built-in grinders. So we're pretty embedded in the world coffee ecosystem.
And so what does a day-to-day look like for you? So, I mean, we've got you on Korea Eve. You're going to Korea tomorrow, then you're going to China. So I'll ask the question in 2 parts.
Yeah.
What does the day look like when you're in Australia working from home, and then when you're out touring worldwide?
So in the morning, I try and give family a bit of a time in the morning and focus, and because I work a lot of nights with Europe time, so in the morning it's about the dogs, the kids, my wife, having some breakfast, and then having a cup of coffee. Then I'd really just work at some focus time so I know what I'm doing for the day and be really clear about what I want to get done. If I don't get stuff done, I get frustrated. So I really try and set that course for what I want to achieve for the day and what I can feasibly fit in. You get into probably from about 11 onwards, it starts with China, Asia, and the rest of those countries that are probably only 3 to 4 hours time difference or more, so I can get those calls in and speak to those people. And then I tend to have a break between 6 and 8. I try and embargo that time, so I've got, again, some family time to sit down and eat. And then I can be working anywhere from 8 p.m. till 2 in the morning, depending on the meetings that I need to go to make sure that I stay in touch with Europe. So that's pretty much a day from an overview.
As they say, grinders never sleep.
Yeah, grinders do never sleep. One of the most important things. And so, when you're overseas.
Well, look, when I'm overseas, jet lag's a big thing, and being present. So I tend to try and go to the gym, get some cardio in, or get some other exercise in, because it really helps me reset once I land. I fly pretty classy in economy, so I need to stretch these pins.
Need to increase the budget for
Please tell me
travel,
you're at least economy plus, just that little bit of extra leg room.
I do get some economy plus. I'm actually flying Jetstar Business Max tomorrow morning.
Oh, Business Max.
Business Max.
No, it just means that there's one guy called Max who's working up there that helps you with stuff.
It's a bit of a points hack. It just as a segue. They do some good status credits when you do that. Status credits are okay on that. It's cheaper than premium economy with Qantas, but you'll get just as many status credits. So if you do the short haul flights and you can do it, just Amex not too bad. You'll get your Qantas points and you'll get your status credits, and you want to keep your platinum status or above, well then, you get your lounges and the rest of it. So it's a little bit of a hack on my side.
I used to live in the States, and all of the stuff they had over there with the credit cards and that was like another level with points. I just had a credit card and it would be just every lounge, every place you could want to go.
Yep.
You could have like unlimited points. Everything was tripled. Here, it's a different ball game in Australia.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a pleb compared to you guys. So you get the economy max or economy plus, whatever, and then you're keeping your exercise regime. A lot of trade shows.
Yeah, it's generally. So I've got Coffee Expo Korea that I'll be in. So I'll probably set out probably 3 to 4 meetings a day. I'll try to do, and then it'll be a dinner as well, and then any other follow-up calls I've got to do with Europe. So that'll be each day. Whenever I'm trying to travel, I'm trying to maximize the time that I can available with clients, and then I carve out a bit of time whenever I can to make sure that I see some industry facing, like what's happening or the people that I know. So it's like in Korea, Chan Ho Hong, like people know him from Australian Brewers Cup scene and the rest of it. He's really done some interesting stuff. So I try and make sure I get to see him. He might be in a roasters hall or what cafe that he's doing next, to BK, to these other people. I try and spread myself around and make sure that you rub shoulders with people that are in the industry, in the coalface, and they'll often tell you too what they like or don't like about your products, and that's really important to hear.
Yeah, right. So that's what you do.
Yep.
What's the product? So you've just outlined that you've got sort of 4 portfolios or 4 brands.
Yeah.
What specifically I wanted to ask you is that I spent a little bit of time with you towards the end of last year on a bit of a roadshow presenting some of the new grinders that you've got.
Yep.
And I've always been very fortunate to be able to sort of play with the latest and greatest that you have.
Yep.
And so what's kind of the status of grinders now, and where do you think it's going? Because, and to preface this with, like, a lot of the times when someone will ask me that's not in the industry to say, okay, well, I'm looking to get something for my partner or for myself, what's a good setup? And I really do say to them, look, get a good grinder. Grinding's so important, and nothing changes in the cafe. So we were on the world tour, the sort of East Coast tour of Australia, presenting some of the new grinders. So what's the future of grinding in a cafe looking like?
Well, I think we look for local pressures. Some of the biggest pressures that we have in cafes is labour costs, all right? So if you break down your average cafe, they could easily be cycling with 40% labour costs. Cost of goods is going to be somewhere between 30 to 40%. And then more and more, as you're seeing rents increase, occupancy costs can be 10% or more. That doesn't leave a lot. So people are going down that pathway of, can I get a product that sets me apart from the crowd? Can I get a product that makes my product better, that I do? And also, can this product lower my costs, right? So the technology that Hemro is certainly trying to put forward is trying to tick a few boxes. So if we look at a roadshow point of view that you're referring to, Kirk, last year, where we looked at the EK Omnia, the EK Omnia is sort of another addition to the what we call a shop grinder range with Hemro. So it doesn't replace the EK43, but it puts a grinder that has the EK43 capabilities into a new market because of its UX and because of the technology that it has. Not everybody can use an EK, let's say in franchise territory, where you may require more skill and more knowledge to operate the equipment, and you've got a much more transient industry. So with something like an Omnia, it's the software and the other wraparound technology that's embedded within the product that bring us to a new market. You look at a Grind by Sync, and Grind by Sync addresses a couple of other different areas too. It gives you the ability to watch what you're doing in real time. I mean, all your dashboard reporting is free with that, and it's not every day that you get something for free.
And I'm just going to pull this up just quickly on that. Yeah. Grind by Sync. What's Grind by Sync? Tell us about it.
So again, this is exciting, this one.
Grind by Sync's a really exciting concept in the sense that it takes the existing grinders that we have now, both in grind by time and grind by weight, which I gather we're all pretty familiar with. And what we're missing is that what we want to be able to repeat that coffee every time. So, if a racing car driver can have a Formula One car and do lap of the day, right? And they can do the fastest lap. Imagine that the car can then run that fastest lap every time thereafter. And that's what people are trying to do. But instead, with a racing car point of view, is you've got to fight to get back to that. So Grind by Sync is an initiative whereby once you define the coffee that you want, the grinder's then managing the parameters through active weight management of your dose, a distance detection, which is a patented feature of Hemro, to know exactly the distance between the burrs, and then responding to the machine's output, as in the extraction time, and then make sure that those parameters then become repeatable. And if something goes off course, the grinder's smart enough to know what needs to change. And that means that someone sets, like you get a Kirk who comes in the morning who sets the coffee and it's amazing, and then Kirk can step off on a break and you or I can make a coffee and it's just the same like Kirk's behind the machine.
Because otherwise, if it wasn't, I'd be screwing it up. So that's great. But that is amazing. So basically, you have your grinder in your cafe. If it starts running a bit quickly, the grinder is connected to the machine and just goes, hey, that's running too fast. Let's tighten it up and just
I literally saw it self-adjust. So you actually see the collar of the grinder actually adjust.
So cool.
And the compatibility with the coffee machine is interesting as well. So is it just La Marzocco that it's capable of pairing right now?
So look, the technology itself is agnostic, but as it stands at this point in time, we saw that La Marzocco was a great partner to launch with. They've got a great passion for coffee and they've got an IoT, I guess, benchmark with their business that's quite significant worldwide. And so we thought bringing that technology to the masses and being able to have a loud voice and cut through to customers is that La Marzocco has been a fantastic partner for that. But ultimately, the technology will widen to other brands. But I think what we get out of La Marzocco right now is a great partner, gives us feedback on performance and how our grinders are responding to machines.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things about this and sort of being involved in the space myself right now is that you had these grinders come out. The grind by weight, when that came out, that was just like, oh shit, we can do that now. And so literally for those that might be new to all this, you put the portafilter in, it literally grinds out to a very, very exact weight, quite an exact weight, the amount of coffee that you're going to use for your recipe, which is all very important. And so that saves a lot of time rather than having to weigh it, which the industry has done for a while now. And then now you're moving on to this space where you don't have to adjust the grind as much, or it will detect when there's issues there. And that's quite amazing. So I can just imagine in practice for a cafe and being involved in the space and wanting to be involved in that more and more in the future, that's a game changer.
Yeah, that's right. But there's a lot of elements that you haven't really had the chance to interact with yet with Grind by Sync that go beyond that. I guess the practical thing that you saw in front of you where the grinder would operate. What you didn't see is the incredible amount of work that the R&D team's done by establishing, and I'll say this categorically, free for life, right, if you buy the grinder, dashboard reporting on what you're doing. So that's going to give you, it knows which group head made the coffee. It knows it'll give you stats on accuracy to your desired recipe. It'll give you every other piece of information, and that information is customizable. So, when you start looking at things that might be erroneous events where like coffee channels or something else, the grinder's smart enough to know that, no, I put the right amount of coffee in there. So it'll highlight the thing as this is a hyperbole event, and it's not going to respond to a hyperbole event, right? So if you were to take 2 grams out of the portafilter and tamp it and put it back in, the grinder still trusts itself that the scale measured out 22 grams, even though it's 20, and then the shot times, it won't then do this sort of responding to hyperbole. So the grinder and then the machine start trusting themselves, and provided they're calibrated, they'll continue to highlight it in the dashboard. So if your grinder starts, say, taking longer, or if it has any other issues, somebody can remotely look at that. And the really cool thing that I think is great is that once you look at multi-store operations, like someone who's getting bigger, like so Axel Coffee, 20 stores, 22 stores doing a specialty coffee thing, got Australian Barista Champions, Seoul Origin, who's got just probably ticking over to maybe 150 stores, right? A Grind by Sync's going to be able to, so they can go and say, okay, Anthony or whoever's doing the Anthony or Jack or whatever, we've got a new recipe for our main blend. We've dialed it in. We've done it on the Grind by Sync in the factory, and we've done it with the machine. We've got the water. We now want to push this out to all the cafes. Just go to the dashboard, push it down. It'll go to every grinder in the field that's connected.
Incredible.
And it just says, this is what your new recipe is, and it's all done for you. So, I mean, that kind of stuff saves car rides. So you can imagine there's carbon footprint stuff that goes with that. There's training stuff that goes with it. There's efficiencies, and there's ways in which to connect with coffee that have never been available to us in the same way before.
Even what you just said there about, the World Barista Champion can kind of put their recipe in. I love that from an experience standpoint, that I could be on the other side of the world.
Exactly.
But I'm drinking the same beans with the same recipe, the exact way that World Barista Champion made it. So that's a great experience thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, people are breaking down what constitutes their water. They're breaking down what constitutes their hardware in their machine. They should be able to break down, and we're really glad that we can do it. They can break down what constitutes how they grind their coffee, right? And obviously that it's now measured in microns, the distance between the burrs. So you can have a micron level adjustment of your burrs and have it recordable, and you can transfer that. With the EK Omnia, it's also recording that distance. So it's not where we did that EK face where we're turning that dial, doing that thing, which was all a bit of a laugh. This is actually, you can go up and down in micron increments, right, to put your grind setting exactly where you want it, and then share it with somebody. I mean, that's great.
That's going to be a game changer for what I do from time to time with the sort of reserve thing, because you'll be able to go to so much more precision with that. But what I really like doing is I've just opened a cafe recently, spent a whole boatload on equipment and tech, but I really like looking at these things as an investment rather than an expense, because you have to have a coffee grinder if you're a cafe. There's no way, unless you're doing instant coffee, lattes, which wouldn't recommend. You have to have one, and so having this good gear, it really can save you time and money and coffee as well. So I mean, I would implore people buy them just because it's a game changer.
Yeah, and look, I will say that we do make other products, and this is not about getting you to spend all the money that you have. I think what's really, really important when I go into a sales situation with people to try and encourage them to look at what is going to benefit their business, you got a grinder like an E80S, all right? Now, that's a time-based grinder. On a standard deviation from a mean over maybe 100 coffees, that's going to have a 0.35 standard deviation from a mean. Now, in real terms, can I taste the difference between 0.1 or 0.2 of a gram in a made coffee? No, I can't. I can't. So what we're talking about here is that there are a range of options based on your budget, and some of them are higher budgets, but okay, let's be real. Stuff costs money, right? So it isn't just about grind by sync. You might go on your pathway of getting in with grinder A to move to grinder B to move to grinder C. I think that's what people have done in Melbourne. That's what's driven innovation, is that people go, well, this is what I can afford to do now. I'll make my money. I'll do the best that I can. And then I upgrade, right? Or you look at machines. People cycled out the machines every 2 to 3 years. Let's be honest. I mean, coffee machines, you can get a decade easily out of it at commercial espresso machines. But what we did was we pushed the equipment to the limits of its ability. I mean, the Melbourne coffee scene was often the Paris to Dakar for coffee equipment, right? If it worked here, it will work anywhere in the world, because you have people that were cycling 120 kilos a week, 200 kilos a week on a piece of equipment, and if there was something wrong with it, they're going to find it. But they were equally invested enough into it to understand and accept the limitations and go, well, okay, that's what that can do. What will I do next? That's what I love about what we do in Melbourne as a whole.
And so that leads me into kind of looking at that and the different types of grinders, moving to the home market. So obviously I do, as with Golden Brown Coffee, with our channel, we do a lot of home grinders and that kind of stuff. Actually, one of our stories of coming to meet each other was that when I was first starting out Golden Brown, I think we had a few thousand followers, nothing much. And I was just reaching out to companies to try to get some support, some gear, and try that kind of thing. And I reached out to you. Yeah. You said, yeah, mate, come on down, try this one, grab this grinder, bring it home. So we got a Mel Koenig home grinder off you, did some videos with that. So first off, thank you for that, for supporting the little guy when we're just starting out. And then secondly, the home grinder market also has to be the one that I feel like every single person is bringing out a new home grinder
100%.
Every single day. It feels like, from brands you've never even heard of all over the places to some of the biggest brands out there. What do you think is going to be the next step in there? There's been a huge step in single dosing and doing that. I think there's obviously a huge market for that, but is it a smaller niche market? Are people still just wanting to dump beans in a hopper? And from your commercial setting, what do you think is going to make its way into the home grinder market?
Well, I think when people are making coffee at home, one thing they don't want is mess, right? People tend not to like coffee grounds everywhere, whatever else. So that zero retention or single dose has a couple of different implications that are a bit different to commercial. In commercial, we tend to look at it more so as a managing cost of goods, right? So you're only grinding what you're using, and therefore you're extracting the best monetization of a really expensive coffee. And that's where the EK found a lot of prominence, and people really loved it and continue to love it. Within the home realm, though, you've got you got to have a practicality, you've got to have a cleanliness, and you've got to have something that allows the person to make the coffee the way they want to without a lot of resistance. So grinders need to be easily adjustable. They need to be a little bit intuitive. They need to not make mess, and hopefully they need to be quick enough to meet people's expectations. That's not an easy task. And so there's a lot of people innovating within that space really heavily to try and vie for that market, because the market is growing and growing and growing for coffee at home. More people work at home. I mean, you can bring forward a million reasons in addition to the fact that we love making coffee. But home grinders haven't yet really landed on their Mount Everest yet. We're still searching for it. And that competitiveness from all of these new brands is what's driving the innovation. So I'll be excited to see what it does. But I think, you're going to see a little bit of the grind by weight notions are really important to people, because it's another way to manage it, because you're already buying a set of scales. So if you can combine two acts into one, then you get some benefits in there.
Well, it makes me, to the grind by sink, and we're probably a long way off from that, in that home market, or maybe not. But to me, I just feel cool if you could pick up a bag of coffee from a shop, come home, and you're at your home grinder, and you can kind of plug in that recipe that you want to make. That feels like it'd be a really cool thing as well, and a great experience for that home barista, which is such a growing market.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And look, Hemro's making great strides in that area. I think when we release a new product and we release a new platform, it'll be really considered in that area, because there's a lot of really discerning people, and people can have good and bad experiences, and that can make for challenges within that realm. So, I think there's a lot that's being invested by companies such as Hemro and plenty of other really, innovative manufacturers to make sure we bring truly valuable products to market too.
And look, I'll say, from the grinding standpoint, when I have my grinder at home, all of the grinders that I have are doing a pretty good job in that kind of price bracket of what they're doing. It is, for me, the little things that really come, how quickly it's going, how clean it is, the feel of just using it. And as well, the biggest one that's getting there is how quiet it is. There are so many grinders that sound like chainsaws going off there.
Exactly.
So those little things, I think for the home market make a huge difference.
Let's get some espresso bar rapid fire questions. I think we're going to call this segment the espresso section. So Ross, the end of the game here is try and answer these questions as briefly as you can. We'll smash them all out in a minute or two. So with your permission, I'll get started. Realm, we all good to go?
Absolutely. Let's
Rapid
kick it
fire.
off. I think in the future as well, maybe we'll even have a timer. Not today, but maybe we need a clock on the table that we just bang.
Wah, 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 wah.
We need some ticking
Like
sounds.
that speed chess thing with tapping it.
Every time you do a question, you have to hit it down.
All right. 3 things you tell someone looking to use the best grinder technology.
Define what you want first, because what you want will be quintessential in getting the right grinder. So I would see what you want, I'd get your budget, and then I'd also understand where are you going to put it, right? So if you're going to put it away, if you're going to put it out, they're the things that you will define. You got to look at it every day and you hate it, despite the coffee being good, it's going to be on your mind.
All right. What surprises you most about your job?
Oh, that countries can just do things that are so left of center, but you think, why didn't we do that? And that's why I love working in Asia Pacific. What took us 5 years is now on warp speed in China, and when they're doing things, you just think,
Quick example.
Well, I think when you look at the speed and efficiency side of cafes, what's going on in China right now with this sort of hyper delivery system, it's cafes where they might have 10 visitors in a half an hour, but they've got drinks leaving every minute. And they have got a lot of intelligence behind how that coffee can maintain its integrity by the time it gets to its customer. So that to me is wild.
Yep, interesting, very interesting. What are 3 non-negotiables in a cafe that if you had one?
I think lighting's really important. I hate it when all the lighting's all off. It makes me feel like I can't look in at different directions if there's different tones and lighting. I like the fact that staff understand and read people when they're in there. So if you're looking like you want something extra, that's really important. And then I think lastly, that people are willing to take time to make coffee. So I don't mind waiting, right? If you're really busy, that's fine. I can wait, but I want the coffee. So really don't be overcome by a busy time in your cafe. I'll wait, but just make it good.
All right, and last one. How much do you think the grinder matters to making the best experience, and how?
Well, I'm biased here, so let's be honest, right? You know where
He
I
comes
work,
out,
you
he's
know
like,
what
it's
I
just
do.
the espresso machine.
But you got 4 seconds or under 4 seconds to do something respective to the rest of the processes that is essential for that coffee to work. So, grinding is super important to get right.
A bit hot in here.
Is the aircon? I think the aircon might be broken. It's getting steamy.
Gosh.
It's getting hot in here. It's time for the extra hot take with 2 sugars.
All right, Ross, this is a section where we invite a guest to give their extra hot take. So it's kind of like a spicy take, but it's extra hot latte with 2 sugars take. We like to keep it spicy. What's yours?
Well, you asked me to be controversial. You told me I needed to be real. You told me that I needed to say something that shook things up a little bit. And what I'm going to say, I'll put a caveat on it to begin with. First of all, it's about what you can get for the money, all right? And so what I'm going to say for my extra hot with 2 sugars is that you will be hard-pressed anywhere to get a better coffee than a $2 Eversys Coles Express coffee. At that price point, that is almost unbeatable for $2. Find me something better that's a 2. I'm not saying it's the best coffee in the world. I'm saying find me something that's better than that for $2.
Okay, all right.
That is a hot take with 2 sugars.
That's a hot take with 2 sugars. I don't know. Are we going to get sued?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, all right. So there should be like a $2 coffee Olympics. I'm kind of feeling like now. I'm feeling a video between you and me actually, golden brown style.
I like that.
Let's figure that one out. Why? Have you got some rationale behind that? Do you think there's...
Well, I think a lot depends on the equipment, like we know. All right, so equipment's got to be good, and I think Eversys are amongst the best at what they do in the super auto market. So that certainly helps. You've got to use good quality milk. So I assume that on the basis, the product is okay there. And second of all, it's got to be made like a cafe, because I don't want something that makes a coffee with 9 grams of coffee. I am expecting a dose. So from that point of view, in an 8-ounce cup, I want a coffee that's got cut through in milk. So, it works relatively quickly. I can control the process. I can choose strong, medium. The interface is pretty good, so I can personalize the coffee. And you know what? At $2, right? If I had my last $2, I would struggle to find anywhere else that could make me a better coffee for $2.
We talked about it in the news last week. The Lazio, the Aldi blend, won best coffee in the world for a supermarket coffee. Is it a $2 coffee better than the Aldi Lazio?
Well, there's different things here. What you're talking about is that's what is it, $14 a kilo at Aldi?
Mm-hmm. I think it's 20, pushing 20 now.
Is it?
No, I reckon it's 14.
14.
I reckon it's 14. Yeah. Lazio medium, I think that's the coffee that you're talking about, Rohan, is about $14. There is a range of coffees there. But what I'd say is that coffee at that point is again, a little bit of an Oscar De La Hoya pound for pound. Try and find something at $14 a kilo that can rub shoulders with it. It's hard. It's hard to do. And it's
golden
hard
boy blends.
Yeah, maybe. But again, I put the caveat on it. It may not light you up for the rest of the day. But what we're talking about here is if you've got $14 and that's your budget, that's what you've got. It's a bit like home machines. Have managed expectations. If you've got $1 million, you're going to have $1 million setup. If you've got $50, what can you make the best coffee with? You might be better with an AeroPress over something else to, choose what is the best weapon to give you what you want. So in that realm, I think you have to appreciate that some people are doing a pretty good job.
Absolutely.
That's a hot take with 2 sugars. I'm going to add mine in myself here.
Please.
Coffee influencers on Instagram. Stop putting shit other than coffee in your portafilter. If you want to add it in after, go ahead. But I'm sick of people sending me videos. All my non-coffee friends are like, do you think this is good? And someone putting orange peels or butter in their thing, or matcha in the portafilter, and then extracting it with the coffee. Please stop doing it. It has to stop. It's an abomination. It must be abolished. Stop right now.
I feel like this is a personal jab at me because I've definitely put some spices in my ground coffee.
He's a killer.
I'm a killer. But I'm going to defend that. I think the butter ones and those kind of things are ridiculous because there's no way that you can actually get the proper extraction. I was doing some plays on some different cultural coffees like the Saudi coffee, where I was taking some of their traditional methods of brewing and taking it from, brewing it filter style or whatever and bringing it into espresso by adding some ground cardamom or ginger, added some saffron afterwards. I got to say, wasn't too bad.
Hey, look, no one's telling you can't drink what you want. That's the good thing here.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just want to say what is good.
It's just coffee.
It's just coffee. After all, it's just coffee.
Just coffee. But you know that effect where like you go to a party and someone's like, oh, what do you do? I work in coffee. Oh, you ever had that coffee that someone's that little rodent out in Bailey's pooped out? We all get that, and I've had enough, and I've had enough of this. So Rohan, stop it. Anyway, your hot take.
My hot take.
Sounds like you need a cup of tea, mate. Just
yeah.
simmer down.
Or maybe I could put it in my portafilter and extract it that way.
My hot take is that co-hosts are overrated.
Yeah.
They're no good at their jobs and they're just a waste of space.
Might ditch this one.
No, my hot take is coffee tools for home baristas are getting out of hand. It's getting insane, especially on the equipment that's being used. And that's fine. I think, a WDT here and there can be great if you're using nice coffees and making a black coffee, that's fine. But the amount of people that I see spraying the beans through a grinder, WDTing, distributing, tamping down, putting a puck screen over the top or an AeroPress paper, pulling that and then dumping it in a giant glass with ice, vanilla, and God knows what else. It's not worth it. Maybe you like the process, but it's getting too much.
It's like the step-by-step booklet in an IKEA like when you're building your own furniture, it's 28 steps how to pull an espresso. It's not that hard, guys. Just put it in, distribute it, tamp it.
Is that the modern day coffee ceremony? Just gone too far?
I think that adding all those steps and process in it makes for an interesting video that gets comments because people are like, what are you doing to your coffee? Why are you spraying it with water? Why are you raking it with needles? And I know from making these videos that doing that in the videos makes them get more views and makes them get more chatter. And the best videos online are going to be the ones that are divisive. So you get the coffee nerds going like, my coffee's 1,000,000 times better since I've WDT'd it. And then you get the people who aren't coffee nerds saying it's just bloody coffee. I whip, a bit of instant coffee in a cup, boil some water and, Bob's your uncle. So I think that those kind of videos bring that divisiveness to the coffee community and the non-coffee community. I'd prefer to bring them together. It's all about people.
It's all about people.
It's just coffee.
It's just coffee.
It's just coffee.
After all, it's just coffee.
Hey, but that concludes the podcast for today. Essentially,
a pod!
Yeah, it's been quite a pod. I mean, Ross, you've not lost your touch. It's great. This has been quite a quailing.
I've loved every minute, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's not for coffee, life in radio would suit you well. Great stories, great voice.
But hey, thank you so much for coming on relatively short notice. You've got a business max flight to get to Seoul tomorrow, so I wish you well there. Hopefully you can get to Jeju Island and try some of the black pork. Korea is one of the best places I've ever been to. I would recommend everyone go to Korea. But yeah, thanks again so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, that's it, folks, for today. And as always,
it's just coffee. Hey.